Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to be going over my top 3 damage per second frames. Now before I actually get into the actual 3 top, just a few honourable mentions. The first one is Mesa. Admittedly, she is one hell of a damage dealing frame, and yes, this does look impressive, but compared to the 3 that I have in mind, this just quite simply is not enough, and it's either just not area effective or it's too slow. My second honourable mention is Mag. Now admittedly, Mag is the highest scaling damage dealer in the game, but the problem is, as things progress, this does start to slow down, and at the levels that I am looking at, particularly with my top 3 frames, she simply doesn't cut it either. So for my number 3, we have Vault. Now in this room there are about 60, I believe, level 155 Corpus texts, and I believe there's about 10 left. So we'll just press 4 again, and there you have it. Vault's 4 has amazing potential for damage. It does become a bit lackluster against armoured targets, particularly in the later game, as armour will slow you down, but there are ways around that in team compositions, particularly just by using corrosive projection or just having, I don't know, a mag for example. So a mag plus a Vault would potentially make one of the most damaging combinations in the game. One strips the armour, one does absolutely horrendous amount of damage. The problem is, and why Vault is only at number 3, is 1, like I said, armour is a hell of a drawback. 2, the more dense the enemy is populated, the more damage he does. If you have one enemy, you're not going to be doing as much damage as some of the other frames on this list. But Vault is still very powerful, and what isn't dead is actually CC'd, which is another reason he is made onto this list, although it's DPS and not CC, but you can always shoot them if they manage to survive the onslaught of electricity. Now for number 3, this is Saryn, and this, coupled with her rework, is going to be quite obvious. Now you might notice the actual count in the bottom right. Need to apologise first, the amount of enemies I'm spawning in here is actually making my game a bit laggy. But you might notice I'm on about 290 odd enemies in this room, and they're all getting chewed through. Like again, I do apologise, it is a bit laggy, but it's something we're going to have to deal with just to show just how potentially damaging these frames are. Again, they're in simulacrum so that I can actually show this rather than having to sit in a survival mop, for example, for 4 hours straight, just to show potentially how damaging they are. Now, with Saryn, due to her rework, she scales tremendously, and she doesn't even need that level of scaling. With the build that I've got, she will be stripping armour very rapidly, as well as building up that damage potential pretty darn quickly. It is at this point that you will notice a few of them starting to flake off and die. I have done it at roughly 50% normal corrupted heavy gunners, and the other 50% being Eximus, so there will be a few in there that can help buff their little friends, but inevitably they're all going to die. I like to get rid of their shields just so I can see just how stripped they are of their armour, as well as how quickly they are going to die. We're in the final stages now, there's not really that many of them left. I'm kicking out about 3,900 damage per tick, and the ticks are going rapid enough, and now obviously at this point they will not have any armour to mitigate any of that damage, so they're all just going to flake and fade away one by one. Now that is some serious damage output, considering the length of time that really took, just over 2 minutes, I would say, for over 300 enemies to have their armour stripped, and then for them to just die outright. I would argue that's pretty impressive, although there's always that one guy that doesn't want to play ball, isn't there? So we'll just give him a quick spore. Obviously we're at 5,000 damage now, so that's going to be stacking pretty quick, and just to add a little bit of insult to injury, we do have Ignis Wraith just to help up that DPS. So it's not always just the frame that you're using, it can also go in conjunction with the weapon, which will go beautifully into what the third and final frame, and what I would class as the top DPS in the game. So just to highlight this a little bit more, I want to show you effectively why Saryn can't make the number one, because she is very good, don't get me wrong. Now this is only 6, and the reason I'm doing 6 is because with the final show of the top DPS frame, for me in Warframe at least, is you can't control that DPS anyway in the slightest. It goes where it wants, it does what it wants, and it is pure mayhem to even try and control it. But with something like 6 corrupted heavy gunners just stood around not doing anything, which is why they have their AI paused, it is easy to show just why this final frame is so powerful. Perhaps not the most practical, but certainly the most deadly, which is quite surprising considering this frame came from a very bad start, shall we say, and it did take one hell of a rework to get it up and running. And the end result is, quite frankly, along with and in conjunction with a few select weapons that you can give it, the overall effect is pure and utter death, and that will be shown now by my Zephyr. Just the hilarity of just how quick you can just dish out some stupid damage. That was the exact same, 6 corrupted heavy gunners, level 155, and just, well, there's one of them left, and it's just toy with him, have a bit of a laugh. Hopefully if something can actually finally get near him. Now, like I said, it's chaotic to control, but the actual damage potential that this frame has is beyond reasonable. It's just unreal. You can deal so much damage. The problem is you need to aim not for the enemies, for those bastard tornadoes that fly around, do their own thing, and don't actually do what you want them to do. They seem to just cut their own detail and really irritate you. If these tornadoes stayed on one enemy and you shot that tornado, it did its thing, and then when the enemy died it moved off to the next one, it would be so much better. But they don't do that, and I suppose it's a good thing they don't do that, because otherwise Zephyr would just ruin, wreck and melt everything in her path, and she would just be completely unstable as a frame, because she can even tank for ranged purposes, but for close range and melee she's a bit iffy. So she would literally have all CC, damage mitigation, tanking, and the best controlled damage dealing in the game. But we're not always really about control, so we're just going to stand here and just smash these guys up like they are absolutely horrible little bastards. Now, the way you actually go about this is by use of her augment funnel clouds. Get a good bit of power strength in there, along with some bit of range. Really, duration is helpful, but it's not always required, because she is now able to recast her tornadoes with funnel clouds. Each one will hold its individual damage potential as well as its individual status chance, but there's more of them. They no longer pick up enemies, which could be seen as a bad thing, but no matter what you put in her way, she will chew through it instantly, and just like that. There is no stopping a Zephyr on a warpath unless you can't aim your tornadoes. That will pretty much stop you. Now, just as a final show, I wanted to show this. It's literally just 6 bursars, 2 of each class at 155, and that's it, they're done. Problem solved. Anyway, that's me, thank you very much, and I'll catch you guys pretty darn soon. Ta-ra!